Welcome to Humanist TV Africa. This is Humanist TV Africa. My name is Katon Mukasa. Again, we are interested in issues human rights and, of course, issues development and working towards the empowerment of us, the human beings. Remember, it is Humanist TV Africa. We want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel, which is Humanist TV Africa. Our Facebook name is Humanist TV Africa. Remember, we have an email. Our email is info@humanisttvafrica.com. Our email is info@humanisttvafrica.com. And we have a WhatsApp number right there. Our spokesperson will be able to reach out to you. If you want to join us as a volunteer, as an intern, as a journalist, as a researcher, as a panelist, you are welcome. We still have vacancies for you. Send your application. Tell us the country where you are. Regardless of the country you are, we are going to be able to work with you. We want to work with you. Right now, we have studios in Uganda, we have studios in Kenya, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, USA, and UK. We have studios there. We are a registered non-governmental organization. I repeat, we are a registered non-governmental organization. You may consider to join us. This is our handle at Humanist TV Africa. We're on TikTok, we are on Facebook, we are on all those media platforms. In the studio is Dennis Bongole, director at Humanist TV Africa, and we're going to be able to bring to you this episode for today. We talk about human rights. And today, a special kind of right, freedom from torture. The right against torture, call it freedom from torture. Freedom from torture is basically a human right that is enshrined in all our constitutions. This program, I'm not targeting Uganda alone. You are in Kenya, you are in Ethiopia, you are in Malawi, you are in Sudan, you are anywhere in the world, you have a right to life. Your constitution, if you are in Uganda, the Ugandan constitution gives you a right to life. The Bill of Rights, Chapter 4 of our Constitution, gives us a right to life. In the world, a right to life is universal. When you are in USA, you are in China, you are in Russia, you are watching us from wherever you are in India, your constitution gives you a right to life. Now, this one I'll take it as a lawyer because I know global law and I know international human rights law. Wherever you are, you have a right to life. It is within your constitution. If you're in Uganda, Chapter 4 of your constitution gives you a right to life. We call it a Bill of Rights. And actually, all countries have bills of rights. Now we have what we call universal rights. Universal rights, rights and freedoms, including the freedom against torture. The right against torture. No one should be torturing you. If they do torture you, we have laws against torture. We have the United Nations law against torture and all the humanizing acts. Uganda ratified this law in June 1987. Uganda ratified a law against torture. It's a UN law. a United Nations law against torture and any acts of dehumanization. Uganda has a human rights watch. Thank you very much. Uganda has a human rights watch, a human rights law. Uganda has a human rights act. Look at that. What are human rights? Human rights are rule of law is part of human rights. Justice, peace, hope, freedom, equality, trust, prosperity. These are human rights, branches of human rights. Prosperity, dignity, rule of law, justice, peace, hope, freedom, equality, trust. Human rights. Let us continue. Let us continue with these slides. Now, these are basic human rights. By the way, did you know that there are 30 basic human rights? Therefore, I'm going to have 30 programs on human rights. Did you know that we have 30 basic human rights, which are enshrined in your constitution? I'll give you some of them right now. The right to liberty and security of person, the right to being treated fairly by the constitution of your country, the right to life, the right against slavery. If you're a slave or in slavery, wherever you are in the Middle East, you have a right against slavery. The right which ironically our governments break. 30 basic human rights. The right against torture, the freedom of thought and conscience and religion. For us, the non-religious, we have a freedom of conscience. We have a freedom against religion. The freedom of opinion and expression. The right to rest. If you're a worker, you have the right to rest. The right to social security and others. This is just a glimpse of the rights this program is going to be handled. Dennis, let us go to other slides. Now, I'll put a minute here. This is Mubarak Bala, our comrade brother, who is in prison for the last 3 years. Mubarak Bala is in prison because he dared to speak, and he was tortured psychologically and physically, and they continue to torture him because the police in Kaduna State arrested him, and the Kano State gave made allegations on his person that actually he did blasphemy amongst others. And as I speak, Mubarak Bala is behind bars. Why? Because he dared to question Islam. He dared to question Allah. And this guy, this friend of ours, is behind bars, which is totally unfair. So we call upon the government of Nigeria to stop barbarism, to release Mubarak Bala. We call upon international governments, international organizations to please don't give up on Mubarak Bala, because he has been tortured psychologically and has been tortured mentally. Let us continue with the right against torture. Now, look at these countries. The countries that basically have a death penalty. A death penalty, and of course, because of blasphemy. When you go and criticize God in these countries, you criticize Islam in these countries, basically you are killed. Afghanistan, Iran, Mauritania, Nigeria, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, in these countries, you are tortured and killed. Death penalty is part of it. Asia Bibi was arrested for 9 years, in prison for 9 years and 16 days because of her speaking out as a minority Christian woman. Now, this is torture. Torture can be psychological. Now, continue ahead. Go ahead, please, with our images. Now, look at this torture here. When you arrest me and burn my car, that is torture. when you attack my home, when you burn my property, that is torture. Now, that has been torture, psychological torture. By burning my property, by destroying my wealth, that is torture itself. That is violence. That is violence. So violence, torture is big. Torture is beyond the border alone. Torture goes psychological. I've told you that Uganda ratified the United Nations Convention against torture and inhuman degrading treatment on the 26th day of June 1987. Uganda is bound by the UN Convention Against Torture, which was signed on June 26, 1987. Now look at what the government of Uganda is doing. Ladies and gentlemen watching us, this person here, Mwesigwa, was arrested by the government of Uganda, by the operatives of Yoweri Museveni, and he was tortured in the so-called torture chambers. He was arrested, tortured in torture chambers, and here is Bobi Wine. Bobi Wine comforting him, and of course it was Bobi Wine and the No Party which treated this guy. Now, Robert Sentam Chagwani, aka Bobi Wine, is the guy who took this guy back to normality, took him to hospital and took care of him. Why was Mwesigwa tortured? Why was Mwesigwa burnt by a flat iron? Why was Mwesigwa beaten by Museveni's torture gurus? Why? Because Mwesigwa supported Bobi Wine. Because Mwesigwa is a noob supporter. Because Mwesigwa is an opposition activist. Now, yet Uganda signed the anti-torture convention. The convention against torture, the government of Uganda signed it on the 26th day of June 1987. Uganda has been a signatory to this law for 37 years. Uganda has been a signatory to this law, but still Uganda tortures people. Then let's continue with other images, please. Look at these guys. These are political opponents, people who speak out. Ladies and gentlemen who have been arrested, people have been disappeared and tortured by Museveni's people, by Museveni's army, by Museveni's police, by Museveni's goons. People acting on behalf of Museveni are arresting activists in Uganda and imprisoning them. Now, this is against torture convention the government of Uganda signed on the 26th day of June 1987. The same government of Uganda signed Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act 2012. We have a law in Uganda called Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act of 2012. This is Kakwenza, a lawyer and my OB at law school, an author who is currently in exile in Germany. He wrote a novel, basically a fiction novel. It was just a fiction novel, but this young lawyer was tortured. You are going to see another image, then show us another image. This is Kakwenza, a lawyer and a writer who wrote a simple novel about the regime in Uganda and was arrested and for almost 2 months was tortured. You can see his back. Those are marks of torture. Up to now, Kakwenza has not recovered psychologically. He was physically and psychologically tortured by Museveni's goons, by Museveni's security in the so-called torture chambers, under the directives of Museveni's son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Now, this is against the Human Rights Act. This is against the Human Rights Act, which Uganda has. Article 10 of the Human Rights Act says every Ugandan has a freedom of expression. Article 10, look for it, of Human Rights Act. Article 3 of the same act talks about the right to life and liberty and security. But look at what Kakwenza was done. Look at what was done to Kakwenza. Article 5 of the Human Rights Act talks about right to liberty and security. Article 7 gives Kakwenza and others tortured by government goons to go ahead and sue them. Under Article 7 of the Human Rights Act, which Uganda has signed, which Uganda has, gives Kakwenza and all victims of torture to go ahead and sue departments and sue institutions that have tortured them. If you have a relative who has been tortured by the rogue regime of Museveni, as a lawyer, I'm advising you that Article 7, Article 3, Article 5, Article 10 of the Human Rights Act, the Article of Human Rights Act gives you a leeway to go and sue individuals that have tortured you. I'm advising you, Ugandans, to please get the evidence and go ahead and sue. Look for pro bono lawyers, sue the individuals, sue the institutions that have tortured you. This is torture in Uganda. The lady on my right was hit by a convoy of Yoweri Museveni, was hit by a UPDF vehicle of Yoweri Museveni, and that lady there was never assisted. That young lady there, a vehicle that was escorting the president, a UPDF car, hit that lady. She lost her arm, and her driver, her relative who was riding a motorcycle, died on the spot. That young lady there was never given justice. The person you see in the photos is a NUP supporter who was beaten by state agents into coma, and later on he lost his life. Now this one here is a counselor, a NUP counselor that was arrested and beaten to near death. Now these are simple examples that I'm bringing out to show you the extent of human rights violations in Uganda. And these are done by state. The state in Uganda is #1 violator of human rights. I repeat, the state in Uganda, the government of Uganda is #1 violator of human rights. The police is #1 violator of human rights. The state itself violates human rights. You can look at that photo. The police is beating people. The police of Uganda is beating people. Remember, Human Rights Act gives us the right to sue institutions like the police. Simply go ahead, consult a lawyer. He's going to advise you how you can sue for justice. Go ahead and sue them. In fact, the law is clear. The Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act of 2012 says that whoever tortures you and it is aggravated torture, he is going to be imprisoned for 15 years. You go in for 15 years. The punishment for torture is 15 years. I advise you as a lawyer, you have to go to court and sue as the victim. Don't use a third party. You yourself, the victim, go and sue whoever has mistreated you. You have a right, whether you're a prisoner like this lady, you have a right against torture. This lady has been tortured. You have a right against torture even when you were a prisoner, even when they say you were a murderer, even when they say you were a suspected murderer, you have a right against torture. Let us have a look at more images than this. I've told you that the Human Rights Act, Article 10, Article 3, Article 5, Article 7, and Article 12 gives you rights to defend your right as a human being. Remember, you have the right to sue a government body that has mistreated you. Now, people are being disappeared in Uganda. People are being put into prisons for a long time. People are being tortured mentally and physically. People are being subjected to medical examination. The Uganda Human Rights Act, Article 7, I repeat it, the Uganda Human Rights Act, Article 7, allows you to sue the institution that has tortured you. The Uganda Human Rights Act, Article 5, gives you a right to speak up. The Uganda Human Rights Act, Article 3, gives you the liberty to be alive and to have proper security. It gives you a right to life. It protects you against torture. Remember, I told you that Uganda signed a UN Convention against torture on the 26th day of June 1987. Those are 37 years ago. Uganda signed the United Nations Convention against torture on the 26th day of June 1987. It binds the government of Uganda to avoid torturing Ugandans. Look at how that lawyer was tortured. Right now, he's an asylum seeker in Germany. Actually, has got his asylum now approved in Germany. He was tortured for 2 months for simply writing, for simply authoring a book. He was tortured for 2 months. Up to now, it tells us that he has psychological torture. He's my hobby. He went to the same law school with me. He's my hobby. He was tortured for 2 months for simply writing. Remember, the Uganda Human Rights Act, Article 10, Article 7, Article 3, Article 2, and Article 5 gives you the leeway to sue government, allows you to speak up and get protection, allows you to say whatever you want to say and don't get tortured. But if you are tortured, it gives you a right to sue the institution that has tortured you. And it allows you to be compensated for the torture you have undergone. You must be compensated. You must be paid sums of money that can try to reinstate you into a better position. Now, people like Mwesigwa, people like Akwenza, the hundreds of people that have been tortured in Uganda, we have laws that prevent you from being abused by anyone, including state agents. The Constitution of Uganda, Chapter 4, the Uganda Human Rights Act, the Prevention Against Torture Act, and then the UN Convention Against Torture and Degrading Acts that degrade humanity. That convention, which Uganda signed on the 26th day of June 1987, binds the government of Uganda not to torture citizens of Uganda. Now, if you're in Malawi, if you're in Zambia, if you're in Zimbabwe, you have the same laws. Your state has no right, has no locus to torture you. If you are tortured, the law says, go and get evidence, go and get the names of the people who tortured you and sue them together with their respective institutions. Because the law says you have a right against torture. This is Kato Mukasa, Ugandan lawyer, sharing with you matters of law and matters of human rights. Thank you so much for watching. This is Humanist TV Africa, where we come here and educate you and empower you and make you informed to fight for your rights. I want to encourage you to please send us an email. Our email is info@Humanist TV Africa, and our WhatsApp number is right there. We shall be able to coordinate with you. You want to open up more offices, more stations, more branches in your country. Wherever you are, you want to open up branches, you want to open up studios in your country. Remember, we are a registered NGO working across the world. Thank you for attending. Thank you for watching. Please share, subscribe, and like. See you in the next one.